Welcome back to YouTube with Lubowski. Today we're going to do percent. On this page, we're going to find the percent of each number. Follow along as we set this up. A percent is a part out of 100. So to find this 68% of 700, I want to know if 68 out of 100 is 68%, then how much is it if I have 700? My favorite way to do this problem is called cross products. 100 times x equals 100x. When two proportions are equivalent, their cross products are equivalent. So I'm going to do 68 times 700. This equals 47,600. To get rid of a coefficient before x, I'm going to do the inverse operation. If it's 100 times x, I'm going to divide by 100, but what I do to one side, I have to do to the other to keep it even. Anything divided by itself simplifies to 1, and I'm left with x equals 47,600 divided by 100. My zeros cancel out, and I'm left with 476. Therefore, 68% of 700 is 476. Ha! Just kidding. Alright, so welcome back to YouTube with Lubowski. I just told my students that I was going to make a really boring video because I wanted to mess with them because they said that my intros weren't that funny. But I can't do that. That would be the longest video ever, and everybody knows that that's just not my style. So, for number 2, we're going to do the exact same thing, just a little bit more excitable. We're still going to set up step by step. We're going to start by writing our fraction for the percentage. So I'm going to do 85% is 85 out of 100. And then I have 520 as my whole. So I'm trying to figure out what is 85% of 520. I need to know what would the equivalent be. So I'm going to use that method, cross products, because I think it's one of the quickest and easiest. So I'm going to do 100 times x is 100x. And equivalent proportions have equivalent cross products. So I'm going to do 85 times 520. Now, if you don't have a calculator, that math might take a few minutes to do, but you might just want to pause the video if you're trying to do it on your own. But I am using a calculator because for this example, it's not about can you multiply. It's about whether or not you can find 85% of 520. So I end up getting 44,200. And just like in question 1, to get rid of a coefficient before x so we can get x by itself, we're going to divide by 100 on both sides of the equation. And that leaves me with x equals, the zeros cancel out, 442. So 442 is in fact 85% of 100. Question 3, again, we're just setting this up over and over again just like this. We're going to do 40% as a fraction, 40 over 100, because every percent is out of 100, equals some amount out of 85. So we're just creating these equivalent fractions, so these proportional relationships, comparing it to a percentage which is out of 100. So we're, again, cross products. 100 times x is 100 times x, 100x. And that will be equal to the other cross product, 40 times 85. Which gives me 3,400. Again, to get rid of a coefficient, so the number before x, we're going to divide it out on both sides. And I end up getting 1x is equal to, the zeros cancel out, and I'm left with just 34. So 40% of 85 is 34. Question number 4, we've got 32% of 325. So 32% written as a fraction, we're setting up this proportional relationship, is going to be equal to some amount out of 325. So we can use a word example. So if I have 100 students and 32 students buy lunch today, this is basically asking me if 32% of all students maybe in the school buy lunch, then how many students would buy lunch out of 325? So it's just comparing it. It's just saying, okay, if I have 100 students, it would be 32. But if I had 325 students, how many would that be? And again, the cross products is, to me, the easiest way to do it. So 100x equals 32 times 325. 325 is 10,400. How do I get rid of that coefficient? I'm going to divide it out. Divide both sides by 100. And that leaves me with my x equals, my zeros cancel, 104. So 104 is 32% of 325. So I think you get the gist of it. Hopefully, if you're struggling with this, ask your teacher or ask me if I am your teacher. But setting up that proportion over and over again and using the cross products method is how you're going to do that. What I'd like from you is to go ahead and pause the video, and then I am going to finish this worksheet with the answers so that you can check your answers against mine. All right, so here's questions 5 through 14. Question 5, 2% of 250 is 5. Question 6, 50% of 104 is 52. So that is a really good example right here of question 6. If you look at this, 50% is half. And so I know a lot of kids, this whole concept might be a little confusing, but think of it with 50%. 50% means half. So if I do 104 and I divide it by 2, I get 52. So that is 50% of it. It's just a different way and it's a different method we have to practice doing, but I'm sure you guys will be great and you'll understand it as time goes on. All right, number 7, 75% of 396 is 297. Question number 8, 90% of 80 is 72. Question 9, 25% of 64 is 16. Question 10, 63% of 400 is 252. I want to do this example because I want to show you something cool. So another thing is if cross products is not always the easiest thing to do, if we look at this, 63% is 63 over 100. Okay, 63% is 63 boxes filled in out of 100 boxes. So if I want to know what is the number out of 400, we can also use the method where we find a common multiplier. To go from 100 to 400, we multiply by 4. So if I multiply my bottom, my denominator by 4, I'd also have to multiply my top by 4, and that would end up giving me 252. So common multiplier can also work when you have easy numbers like 100 becomes 400. But when we have numbers like 56% of 475, that's when we use the cross product method in most cases to get 266. Another way that you can do this is you can actually turn 15% into a decimal. So 15% would be 0.15 or 15 hundredths. And then we just multiply it by the whole number of 3. Multiply it by 20 because we're trying to find 15% of 20. Of it, when we hear the word of 20, that actually implies multiplication. So we can actually do the decimal times the whole number, and that would give us 3, which means that 15% of 20 is 3. Number 13, 48% of 50. So again, we can do that. We can turn that into a decimal. So 48 hundredths times 50 gives me 24. And the last one, just so you can see that quick trick method, if you can turn this into a decimal quickly, which would be 800ths, because percentage is always out of the hundredths, times, because the word of implies multiplication, 725, we get our answer of 58. So cross products, common multipliers, or multiplying the decimal times the whole number are all options that you can do for this. So just make sure that you are going with whatever works for you and finding the best method that you can repeat over and over again. It'll be really easy once you do a lot of practice for this, for you to jump into word problems and be able to execute finding the percent of some amount of number. A lot of times it ends up being in our probability, and sometimes it ends up being when we're talking about money. So make sure you ask for extra help when you come to small group with me, or if I'm not your teacher, you can always drop a comment and I can try and get back to you, but I can't always respond to all the comments. So hope you enjoyed the worksheet, and hopefully you'll get some more extra practice for this.
If you thought the beginning of this video was boring, you're probably absolutely right, because I had some of my 7th graders this year. They told me that they didn't think this was funny. They said that this is corny. Well, I like being corny. I like myself, and you know what? I have a good time with it. So, I'm just going to keep being me, and you should keep being you, and you should be a good human, and you should just love life. And my dog is just crying in the background of this video, and there's nothing I can do about it. Do you hear him crying? This is why I can't record videos at home, because he acts like someone is trying to hurt him. He's just standing on the other side of the gate and can't get to me. This is what it's like being a dog mom. You're never